on June 20th, 2019 in Brooklyn, New York. The young prospects of the draft sat anxiously as they waited to hear their name called, but one player in particular stood out among the rest. Zion Williamson. He was the consensus number one pick in that year's draft and the most hyped prospect since LeBron James. He was an absolutely electric forward coming out of Duke that produced highlights like it was nothing. The hype surrounding him guaranteed that number one pick status for Zion. The New Orleans Pelicans were the team to win the draft lottery, with only a 6% chance to do so. The New Orleans fan base were ecstatic to know that Zion was pretty much guaranteed to be a Pelican. They deserved it too, because the season they had was straight up painful. They struggled to stay competitive and injuries took a toll on the team. Ultimately, they would fall short of expectations and miss the playoffs with a 33-49 record. On top of that, Anthony Davis, the star player of the team, publicly demanded a trade mid-season. When Zion's name was called, he walked on stage and shook hands with Adam Silver, ready to begin his new tenure in New Orleans. Anthony Davis would be traded just 2 weeks later and would eventually go on to win a championship with the Lakers in 2020. The Pelicans were ready to enter a new era of basketball centered around their star prospect, blissfully unaware of the looming curse they would soon have to face. With new players coming in from the Anthony Davis trade, the Pelicans were rebuilding their roster in a big way. Receiving multiple young promising players to complement Zion, as well as 2 future first-round picks, which is quite a haul for New Orleans, and most fans were happy about it. In the first 4 preseason games of 2019, Zion averaged 22 points and 9 boards a game, shooting 71% from the field. He lived up to the expectations fans had for him, until unfortunate news about Zion struck before his final preseason game: a torn meniscus. He was expected to miss the first 6 to 8 weeks of his rookie season. This would unknowingly be the first of many future injuries that would sideline Williamson, and the first symptom of this cursed era for the Pelicans. His long-awaited return on January 22, 2020 marked his NBA debut in a game against the Spurs. He went absolutely crazy in the fourth quarter and got 17 straight points, going 4 for 4 from 3 in the process, bringing the Pelicans back into the game. They would ultimately lose, but Zion was back and better than ever. The Pelicans would miss the playoffs this season, but players like Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and Drew Holiday shined in Williamson's absence. New Orleans would draft Kira Lewis Jr. with the 13th pick in 2020, who later became a casualty of the Pelicans' curse, tearing his ACL in 2021 and eventually being traded to the Raptors in 2024. The 2021 season is considered to be one of the Pelicans' more healthy seasons in recent history, despite still having notable injuries to players like Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball. They would trade Drew Holiday to the Bucks, and he would end up winning a championship in 2021. Sounds kind of familiar. Zion would end up having his best season yet, filled with career highs and his first All-Star selection. Despite missing the playoffs, the future still looked bright in New Orleans, especially after adding even more draft capital in the Drew Holiday trade. In the 2021 draft, the Pelicans would end up with sharpshooter Trey Murphy III, and New Orleans would strike gold by selecting defensive specialist Herb Jones with the 35th pick. Herb would end up developing his 3-point shooting ability, which would allow him to become a formidable two-way threat in the league. Herb Jones and Trey Murphy would both deal with multiple shoulder injuries down the line, including a torn rotator cuff for Herb and a torn labrum for Trey Murphy. Both players would end up becoming a victim of the curse. Pelicans fans were hyped for the upcoming 21-22 season. But of course, the curse struck. Zion suffered a Jones fracture during the off-season that would require surgery. Team staff were optimistic that he could return by the start of the season, only for the timeline to be pushed back to December, then delayed all the way to the All-Star break, only for it to eventually be announced that he won't play at all. Surprisingly though, the Pelicans made the playoffs that year, led by Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, with rookies Herb Jones and Trey Murphy playing big parts in the team's success. They got into the playoffs as the 8th seed via the play-in tournament and faced the Phoenix Suns in the first round. They would get eliminated in 6 games, but demonstrated an ability to win even without Zion. In the 2022 draft, the Pelicans were on the clock at number 8. They selected the Australian guard from the G League Ignite, Dyson Daniels. Listed at 6'8", 200 pounds, Dyson was drafted for his size and unique defensive ability. He too would suffer from the curse in the form of a torn lateral meniscus and many other injuries during his time with New Orleans. Zion would suffer a season-ending injury in the 22-23 season and would suffer another one late in the 23-24 play-in game against the Lakers. Fast forward to 2024 after 2 more very disappointing seasons. The Pelicans make a deal with the Atlanta Hawks. The Pelicans would receive DeJounte Murray from the Hawks in exchange for Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr., as well as 2 first-round picks. With the acquisition of DeJounte Murray, the Pelicans have gained a much-needed upgrade to their roster, or so they thought. In his very first game with the Pelicans, Murray fractured his left hand and was sidelined for most of the season. Absolutely brutal. His return during the season was riddled with inconsistency, and as soon as he started to get back on track, the curse came back for more. January 2025, in a game against the Boston Celtics, disaster struck a second time. A torn Achilles that would keep Murray out for the rest of the season. Incredibly devastating moment for DeJounte Murray and the New Orleans Pelicans. Checking in on the Hawks, Dyson Daniels would end up becoming the best perimeter defender in the league, landing himself on the all-defensive first team, and he would have his best season yet, including an incredible 3 steals a game next to Trae Young in Atlanta. Even Dyson himself claims the Pelicans organization is cursed, which is where I got this idea from. Shout out Dyson. Dyson would go on to say, "Every year there's something new. I'm happy I'm not there anymore. I had like 4 or 5 ankle injuries down there as well. There's something in that water down there or something. They got hamstrings, they got knees, they got concussions and stuff as well. They get everything down there. I don't know what it is. Playing hard, I guess." Dyson being happy to get out of New Orleans should tell you everything you need to know. And if losing that trade with Atlanta wasn't enough, after the new GM of the Pelicans, Joe Dumars, made a solid choice to draft Jeremiah Fears in the 2025 draft, New Orleans would then make the puzzling decision to execute another deal with none other than the Atlanta Hawks for pick 13. They traded away number 23 and a future first-round pick in the next year's draft to select Derek Queen from Maryland. Another unfortunate trade for New Orleans came a week before when they gave up the Pacers' 2026 first-round pick right before the Bucks stole Miles Turner from Indy. And with Tyrese Halliburton being out, that pick would have likely been valuable. In hindsight, these trades haven't aged well at all, but Joe Dumars is taking a confident step and expects nothing less than a playoff run for his squad. Some people say that the roster is talented enough to make some noise, even in a stacked Western Conference. Others believe injuries and the Brandon Ingram trade will derail the Pelicans and give a very valuable pick to Atlanta. What do you think about the future of New Orleans? As a Hawks fan myself, I really hope New Orleans is able to break this curse and find some genuine success. They truly do deserve it, man. Will Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen be the next chapter of the Pelicans' curse? Or will these picks finally break the cycle and lead New Orleans to the glory they've dreamed of ever since drafting Zion? If you enjoy this type of content, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.